The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's Friday. TGIF. So
or is that TGI Florence?
Yeah. That's true. TGI Florence. Florence, I guess, is hammering.
I mean, I've been watching all morning, and I'll tell you, Florence is hammering North and South Carolina.
It caused a lot of devastation.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's a Category 1 storm. But, you know, all the meteorologists have said the same thing. Don't worry about the category. This storm is going to move slow, and it's going to drop a lot of rain. It's moving at 6 miles an hour to the west, which means it's going right inland.
Yep.
And when you're talking 3 feet of rain, it's a lot of water.
I saw one report that said they could get in excess of 40 inches.
Right.
So that's more than, more than 3 feet.
Exactly.
So that's going to cause, and what disturbed me, that's some good. Some people were rescuing the animals. Some people are leaving their animals behind, and they're leaving them chained up so they can drown. So why doesn't that surprise me with this society? But it's really disconcerting. It's too bad. They're going to get a, that's the problem. It's not going to be the wind with this storm. It's going to be like, you can even forget about even classifying it as a hurricane. It's just a giant, one of the biggest rainstorms in history. That's what it's going to end up.
It's almost like our nor'easter that we got March 2nd.
Yeah, and it's going to cause a lot of devastation, and that's too bad. And speaking of devastation, we're not on Fall River now. We're reaching out to other areas of the country to start off the show, but you wanted to talk a little bit about
Lawrence, Andover, and North Andover.
Yeah,
3 cities with major gas explosions.
Yeah, there was one dead. An 18-year-old.
And he was killed by the debris from the explosion.
A chimney fell on his car.
Right.
And from the explosion, collateral death, but still a death caused by the explosion. But the other problem is that they said that this company has had a similar incident 3 or 4 years ago.
Yes.
And so apparently this company, I don't know, they didn't put in the necessary safeguards from the first time, or they should have. Gas is extreme. It's really, really efficient, and it burns clean, but it's very, very dangerous, obviously. If there's a leak, and a leak isn't mitigated immediately, especially an underground leak, because underground, even though, people think, oh, it's just going to go up into the atmosphere. When it's underground, it follows, because when they run the pipes, they make tunnels, and it basically follows the tunnels, and there's drafts in those tunnels. And of course, there's also accesses to different houses, because they run the pipe into the house, so the pipe chase, and the gas will follow the pipe chases into the basements and into the houses. And ultimately, you're going to have an explosion, because virtually every house has a hot water heater or a boiler with a pilot light. And once the gas gets into the explosible range, and then it's going to go, one of the oil company's favorite adages was "Go gas, go boom," But that's the thing. There was a tremendous hazard with natural gas. That's the reason they put the odorant in it, so you can find out and get that. So for you out there who don't know this, which you should, if you smell natural gas, get out. Don't turn on any lights either, because if there's a spark,
And that's what they were saying. I mean, all the newscasts yesterday afternoon were saying, don't use your cell phone. Don't turn on any lights. Don't turn off any lights. Don't do any of that. And people don't realize even shutting off a light can create a spark.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't see internally, there might be a slight arc, even static electricity.
Yeah.
Anything, any source of ignition, when it's in the explosible range, will blow the place up. So, the bottom line is, what you do if you smell gas, run like hell. Get out. Get as far away from the building as you can and call 911, and they will notify the gas company if you report a gas leak, because if you call a gas company, you're gonna go through that menu of, oh, you know, is this an emergency? Is it a call? Call 911, gas emergency. It's SOP for fire departments to immediately when we get a gas emergency to dispatch will notify the gas company immediately, and they will come a lot faster, believe me, when they call by the fire department, because they know it's a true emergency. It's not just a little leaky pilot with very little, because if you call, and when in doubt, call. You know,
Right.
people go, oh, you know, I didn't want to call. I didn't think it was that bad. Well, you know, when I was working, I always used to tell people, look, that's what we're here for. I'd rather come to a building and have nothing happen than somebody say, well, I don't want to bother them, and then end up with fatalities. That's not the way it's done in public safety. We'd rather go there and have it be an incident that's relatively innocuous than have somebody worry about that and end up with fatalities. That's not the way. That's not the way things go. So it's it's a tragedy up there. They lost a lot of buildings already, and hopefully they've got it mitigated now. I'm sure they must have at least by now shut the lines down.
Yeah.
And they're gonna but they still
They didn't have enough firemen. They didn't have enough fire apparatus to handle all of these fires.
Well, the problem is it
was too many. I mean, there was just too many.
It's so labor. I mean, it's so manpower oriented, like all that stuff is. But when you get something like that, you don't know where the gas is going because you can't see it.
Right.
You can smell it, but but you have to actually, you'll evacuate the area, and get the gas company in. But then you might, when you're evacuating it, you have to also actually have people with meters go in, and you don't know. As I said, it's not like a chain. You had a house blow up and then 3 houses down the next one, because it all depends on how the access along the chases are for the gas, and because it creates kind of in those tunnels, when it begins to move, it creates kind of a Venturi effect. Might pull it, if it's hard to get in, you won't get as much gas in some buildings. The pipe chase might be a little tighter. It hasn't hit the flammable range. So, there's so many variables, but the problem is you need a ton of manpower to evacuate, to check the buildings, to do things, and it's a very, very hazardous situation because as most people don't realize, you can't even like shut off your lights. Just get out.
Yeah.
You turn on your light because you want to look in the basement, and you can't do any of that. Can't use your cell phones. You can't use any of that stuff. And it's very, very important that you do one thing, and that's get the hell out of the building.
But I think one of the things that makes it important that you just get out of the building and not flip on a light is, even with all the mutual aid they received. I mean, I saw people from Salem, which isn't close by, were providing mutual aid to these 3 cities, and they still didn't have enough people. No matter how much equipment they brought in, they didn't have enough because, I mean, there was just one house after another blowing up.
Yeah, and it's extremely dangerous to the public safety personnel, firefighters, police officers that are doing basically traffic control and cordoning off the area. You never know where that thing's going to pop up. Like you said, you had a house, one house blows up, and then you say, oh, okay, well, let's see what happens. Then, 3 blocks down the road, the house is blowing up, and you don't, you've got police personnel maybe evacuating. It's extremely hazardous, and that's one of the reasons that you got to try to get everybody out as far away as possible, and you got to, the gas company has got to be in there. You've got to know where the line runs so you can begin to start projecting how you're going to, where you're going to evacuate, where it's going to probably go.
Right.
And even then, it's a guessing game. It's an extremely difficult. It's one of the worst. It's one of the worst kind of incidents you can go to in a fire service, because you just don't know. You just don't know where it's gone, where it is. I mean, you can get in, you can smell the odor, but then you have to get a meter on it to see, if it's in the range. And when it gets in that range, it's going to go, and it's going to go quickly, and it's going to cause a lot of damage. It's fundamentally a bomb. You know, it's actually what they call a BLEVE, because natural gas is then in a gaseous state. It's not in the cryogenic state, but it then pushed through the pipes. But it's still it's basically, and it starts as that, and that's a boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. So what happens is, because gas is, obviously gas will just spread out because and just fill every container. It just expands, and it's not like water, and it's not semi-viscous, and it's not a solid. It's a gas, and gases can really disperse throughout gigantic areas. So it's a big deal, and it's a really dangerous situation. So hopefully there are no more fatalities, and hopefully they've mitigated the situation, and we wish them all well, especially all the public safety.
Yeah,
people.
My heart goes out to all of them, and it's going to be a difficult situation.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I guess we can talk about the ghosts now.
The ghosts, yeah. Well, 6 apply, 5 make the cut for the Fall River Redevelopment Authority. The new director of economic development. How long have they been around? As long as I can remember. Look at the great job they've done so far. Rather than looking for a new leader, we might look for a new organization, because if you look at Fall River's economy, it hasn't gotten any better in decades. As a matter of fact, it's gotten progressively worse. And all we do is provide people with jobs and pay raises and figure out how to give them a position will pay between $90,000 and $130,000. So come into a city that's an economic disaster and take over that $130,000 annual salary from somebody who's done it for I don't know how long and did nothing. So again, if something's not working, you've got to try to change the strategy. And obviously the RDA has not been really successful in anything, as has any of our redevelopment initiatives, because they focus on marketing and stuff rather than training our workforce so they can actually get jobs. Even though everybody knows, well, at least I should never assume, but everybody knows there are millions of jobs that are going unfilled in the United States because of lack of training. There are no more basic entry jobs, dishwashers maybe, delivering pizza and Chinese food maybe, but that's about it. All the jobs in the factories, 90% of those jobs have been outsourced. All these jobs that require virtually no training and no skill, even a rudimentary skill, are gone. So the people that are finding success in their economies, in communities, blue-collar communities, are the ones who are retraining their people in welding or pipe fitting, or like the commercials on the before the recent primary in Rhode Island, and what they do in Germany, which is train people to get jobs, because once you put people to work, the economy does get better. I don't know why they can't figure this out. They think if they bring in these giant employers, give us a tax increase because they give them freebies, TIFs, and then they hire 12 people, and then when the TIFs are gone, they're gone. They think that helps the economy, even though it's happened, time and time again. How many businesses have left Fall River? And speaking of that, did you notice, CJ, that the dry cleaners that are up there in a CVS Plaza is closed?
Yep.
Yeah, that business has been there for
ages.
That's the dry cleaner I normally use. And I drove by there the other day, and I looked in, and because I'm about, I was going to drop off, something to be dry cleaned after, and I looked, the place is gone. And, another small business down a toilet in Fall River, and nobody will know unless somebody mentions it and they say, oh yeah. So if you go to that dry cleaner, don't go because it's not there anymore. And
hopefully you got your clothes back.
I didn't see, I didn't have anything in there, but that's the thing. It's just, you go to a few meetings where a sport coat, I'm going to drop it off. Next time I have a meeting, after the meeting, I'll drop it. I normally drop it off there and pick it up a couple days later. But Yeah, another small business, and a business that was there for, not a new business, a business that had been there for decades, and it's just too bad.
But that, that's also one of the ads you're hearing in this political season.
Yeah.
That, in Rhode Island, they're turning around saying, Gina Raimondo, she's doing all of these new jobs, new schools, all this stuff. But then they turn around and say, but we lost this long-standing employer, Benny's, under her watch.
Yeah.
And the same holds true here in Massachusetts and here in Fall River.
Yeah.
And, I was recently reviewing the want ads through Mass Hire. It's now called Mass Hire. It's not the Fall River Career Center. And I wanted to see who's looking for help. Not because I'm looking for a job, but I want to see what the market's doing out there. Guess who's looking for help again? Lots and lots of help. So much so that their ad is almost permanent on the site. Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon. They can't keep their employees.
They can't keep. They don't pay well. They're a predatory employer. They really abuse their employees. There have been numerous national news media stories about what they do, and of course you are definitely expendable at Amazon. They're trying to run everybody else out of business, even the supermarkets, and they will replace you with a robot in a heartbeat if they can. So it's not a job that you're going to make a career out of, and most people, unless you're an executive. But if you're working out on the floor of Amazon, you're going to have very, very stressful work environment. You're going to be getting low wages, and most people don't stay there. And we don't have a lot of people there anyway.
No.
That's not the way to get people employed. Get jobs at electric boat, pipe fitters, stuff like trades. It's been proven in Germany, as we said, for 50 years. And Raimondo, speaking about that campaign, let's deviate. Boy, it didn't take long to get into the attack ads for the final election, huh?
No, not at all.
I mean, the votes weren't even totally counted yet.
Yeah, and they were already coming out.
And the attack ads, and did you notice? I really, funny, because it just reinforces, my utter disdain for politicians and how absolutely, they have absolutely no ethics or scruples. They will lie about anything, including their own records and everything else. But did you notice they already whacked Raimondo? The first attack ad for Fung showed Cranston, and they showed some buildings that were in total disrepair.
Yep.
They're in Providence.
They're in Silver Lake section of Providence.
Silver Lake section of Providence. They weren't even in Cranston. They'll make up. Just remember about politicians. And we get back to what you were talking about statistics and stuff. You can't believe anything politicians say. That's why when we quote statistics, we use the U.S. Census Bureau or some neutral statistic. You know the old adage, figures don't lie, but liars can figure? You can manipulate statistics and cherry-pick statistics to justify anything you want. And that's what politicians do. You want to say you're doing a good job on crime? You manipulate the statistics. You want to say we need more money for the police? A guy gets arrested with 5 warrants, you classify that as 5 arrests. You want to show it less, you classify it as 1 arrest. The guy's got 5 warrants. Same thing with firefighting. There were departments that if 6 pieces went on a run, they'd count that as 6 runs. Other communities counted that as 1 alarm. So, and that comes with everything. Not only that, I just happen to know those things because I used to do research on that about comparisons of how busy our department was to other ones. But the fact is that, listen, when a politician gives you a figure or a half figure, don't believe them. And forget about those. All we have to do in the not too distant past is remember all the absolute garbage statistics that you got when they were looking for the debt override for the school. Do we remember that, CJ?
Oh, yeah. That's still fresh in my mind.
Do you remember the giant pile of manure that they cherry-picked all this statistics? Of course, when we made our presentation, well, you can't outspend money, and they got all the little people, and they parade the children in again. It's not about their lack of maintenance that they let a building that should have been good for more than that go to pot in probably 10 years. It's needed replacing for 30 years because of lack of maintenance, but there's no accountability. But remember the statistics that we cited about how many people we retain who actually get college degrees?
Right.
What how they've manipulated statistics about graduation rates and other things. But see, those are actual statistics because they're not ours. We didn't cherry pick them. We got them from the federal government. We got them from a neutral. When you start seeing very specific statistics from politicians, you better check the whole thing because, they're only showing you the tree in a forest of manure. So that's one of the problems we have. And now with this economic development thing, let's look at the great plans of these 5 candidates. Let me see what it's going to be.
Well,
marketing, market the city. Yes, market the city. Market the city that's #1 in crime, the most dangerous city in Massachusetts, has the lowest per capita income, has virtually no jobs. Let's market this baby, and that's going to cure everything. Just remember, if we just got one Amazon, everything would be fixed. Oh, wait a minute. We did get Amazon, and nothing changed.
That's right. And here's the interesting part about it. They're already saying, because we mentioned this on our last show, that, it's going to be interesting to see how an FOJ gets this job.
FOJ.
FOJ.
Our former columnist at the Herald News came up with a nice little acronym there, and it's a FOJ, I guess. And he's referring to City Hall being full of friends of Jazel. And you know something? He's right.
He's right.
That looks like the employment agency for former campaign workers and friends of Jazel. So FOJs, he said the city is full of FOJs, and he's, I've got to agree with him. Just as he said, the Redevelopment Authority are like ghosts. Nobody ever sees them except when they're looking for new positions and money.
But here's the interesting part about it. The employees, the director for the Redevelopment Authority and his assistant or her assistant are going to be employees of CDA. They're not going to be employees of the Redevelopment Authority or the city. They're going to be employees of CDA, which means they're employees of the city because they contribute to the retirement program and everything else.
But they can say they're not paying for it because the feds are paying.
Exactly.
That's what
they're going to get a budget of $479,240. And they're going to have a budget of $524,948. And the Redevelopment Authority is going to have to kick in, of their own money, $45,705. Where does the Redevelopment Authority get its money from?
Yeah, indicates redevelopment will kick in. And
they have to pay for that for services not allowed under HUD regulations.
Yeah, which probably of services that are not needed because HUD is pretty comprehensive.
Keeping people employed.
But again, who's going to take it on a chin? Because guess what? Whether it's paid with federal money, state money, or city tax money, raise your hand if you pay taxes. That's it. We're paying. There you go. We're the people right here. It's us paying a freight again for somebody that's going to range between 90 and 130. So the guy that's leaving was probably at the top end of that spectrum. 130. So let's see how many years the last person to fill that vacancy worked there and made 130 G's for basically doing absolutely nothing to improve the economy of the city of Fall River.
Well, while we're on the Redevelopment Authority, they tabled their vote on the city pier design work. If you remember a few shows back, I was talking about that because I had been to that meeting where nobody knew anything about it. They had no idea what they were going to be voting on, and they were going to take a vote on it, but they tabled it, and now they've tabled it again. What was expected to be a vote to enter into a contract with the firm to design and pre-permit to develop the transient dockage at the city pier was waylaid during a Florida Redevelopment Authority meeting on Wednesday after 2 members questioned the move. Of course, and it's the same 2 members.
Well, I can't believe it. I wonder where Michelle Dion heard the word. She said that had not been given enough financial information for, quote, full financial disclosure, unquote. And the members had you ready for this one? One of my favorites. Fiduciary duty. That's right, you do. I wish you'd remember that more often. And, kudos to Michelle. She's a new appointee, but for saying that. But, politicians have a fiduciary duty to the taxpayer, not to try to bankrupt them, but they don't abide by that fiduciary duty. So They continue to spend money and destroy retirement systems and everything else. Actually, during that, you know, I noticed one thing, because I'm very sensitive to stuff like that. You know, it gets me in the ear. When I was watching the debates in Rhode Island for gubernatorial debates, and the post-debate interview, they were talking about the retirement system, and Raimondo was part of that, this, you know, taking benefits away from people and stuff. And some of those were, you know, and then a couple of the candidates saying, oh, yes, he said, we got to really revisit that, because we've got to, the thing's a mess and it's costing too much, and we're going to have to sit down with the retirees and talk about how we can, you know, they're going to have to basically take a cut. Well, you know, every time I hear that, it really disturbs me, because virtually every time, you know, this is what happens. This is why I'm always screaming about the city pumping people into the system, giving people, you know, putting people in and changing their categories, and like we're always talking about it, and putting in a greater unfunded liability. Then they complain about it, but they create it. Retirees pay their fair share. People who work for 40 years pay into the system. It's taken out of their check. We didn't bankrupt the system. Cities and towns that skim from the system don't put in their fair share, as Fall River didn't do from 02 to 12. And even today, they always whine and cry and try not to put in what's the recommended amount, try to say that the figures are flawed, we don't have to put in that much. Well, I'll remind you all that this retirement system in the state of Massachusetts, and I know one of the people who was actually the architect of it, John Jennings, head of the Boston Retirement Board, International Association Vice President, trustee, guy who actually also wrote some of the retirement law, at least the boilerplate that's still being used. Brilliant guy. Came down to Fall River once to testify in front of our city council on my request. A very, very good friend of mine, a great man. This system was supposed to be fully funded statewide by every retirement board by 2010. There's virtually no retirement board in the state that's fully funded. Most of them, like Fall River, are well underfunded. Why? Because cities, this is what they do. You got our financial team whining all the time, but they will they will create jobs, give out, change retirement categories to impose a greater burden on the retirement system, and then cry about it. And their solution is to cut the pensions of the people who, unlike them, worked for 30 and 40 years and paid out of every paycheck into the system. We never missed a payment. You did. We never paid less than we were supposed to pay, but you did. And who gets it on the chin again, just like the taxpayers? The retirees. Because remember, when you see all our political retirees making over $100,000 retired, remember one thing: the hard-working people who worked in every department in the city of Fall River and worked 30 and 40 years to get a pension, we have 60% of those people living on less than $25,000 a year. And that is a travesty. And when I see that, when I see those two buffoons going in front of the council and complaining about, you know, that's the reason I don't go down there. I might actually probably have to be let out of there in handcuffs. So if that doesn't get you angry, especially if you're a retiree or looking at your retirement system, you'll know why we're always angry. So have a good weekend. Enjoy the great weather.
See you on Monday, everybody. Thanks for watching.